At 05:45 on July 10, 1943, Lieutenant Commander Edward P. Hussey watched LST-348 grind onto the beach near Licata, Sicily. The ship's massive bow doors swung open, revealing not an invasion force, but an engineer's dream: 350 feet of floating steel pontoon sections. Hussey commanded a 36-man Seabee detachment about to test a technology the Navy considered so revolutionary, so potentially decisive, that its development had been classified as a strategic secret for 2 years. The Germans had fortified Sicily's beaches with obstacles specifically designed to stop amphibious landings. Intelligence reports confirmed minefields, concrete barriers, and underwater obstacles extending 200 yards offshore. Every military planner in the European theatre understood the same brutal math. Beaches this heavily defended were either impossible to take or would cost thousands of lives trying. But Hussey's team carried something no army had ever deployed in combat: a weapon that wasn't a weapon, a dock that assembled itself, a bridge that floated on air, the Navy pontoon causeway. Built from standardized 5 by 7 by 5 foot steel boxes, each weighing 1 ton, connected by specially designed dual fittings that locked together in seconds. Hussey's men had 8 minutes to prove it would work. The concept originated in the mind of Captain John Laycock, a Civil Engineer Corps officer with chronic headaches, partial deafness, and an obsession with solving impossible problems. In 1940, while recovering from one of his debilitating migraines, Laycock sat at his kitchen table in Washington, D.C., playing with cigar boxes and kite sticks. He was trying to visualize a way to get heavy equipment off ships and onto beaches where no docks existed, where enemy fire made traditional unloading impossible, where tides shifted 15 feet in 6 hours. Traditional pontoon bridges dated back to ancient Rome. But Laycock's breakthrough was standardization. Every box identical, every connection universal. A Lego system for industrial-scale construction. 1 box could become part of a barge. 20 boxes formed a causeway section. Hundreds became a floating dry dock capable of lifting battleships. The Navy approved development in February 1941, 9 months before Pearl Harbor. Bureau of Yards and Docks Chief Rear Admiral Ben Morrell understood that war with Japan would require island-hopping campaigns across the Pacific, where deep-water ports didn't exist, and Japanese defenders would destroy any fixed infrastructure. Mobile, rapidly deployable docking facilities weren't just useful, they were essential to victory. Pittsburgh Des Moines Steel Corporation built the first experimental assemblies: a 50-foot barge, a 100-ton dry dock, a seaplane ramp. Testing commenced at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, in the cold waters of Narragansett Bay. On March 18, 1943, the system faced its critical trial. LST-348 approached the Davisville Proving Grounds, carrying 2 connected causeway sections, totaling 350 feet in length. Aboard were 20 Seabees, 1 warrant officer, and 1 Civil Engineer Corps lieutenant. The test parameters were unforgiving: deploy the causeway in active swells, align it with the LST bow ramp, secure it to the beach, and drive 2 M7 self-propelled howitzers across it. Each howitzer weighed 25 tons. What happened next altered the fundamental assumptions of amphibious warfare. As LST-348's bow touched sand, the Seabees released the causeway sections. Forward momentum drove the floating steel bridge up onto the beach. The crew swarmed over the pontoons, flooding specific compartments to lower the structure, adjusting ballast to achieve perfect alignment with the LST ramp. Anchor chains rattled into the surf. Connection fittings locked into place. 8 minutes after the LST grounded, both howitzers rolled across the causeway and onto dry land. No cranes, No traditional docking facilities. No delays. 8 minutes. Admiral Richard Connolly, Commander, Landing Craft and Bases, Northwest African Waters, observed the trial personally. He immediately grasped the implications. The causeway didn't just solve a logistics problem, it weaponized speed. In amphibious assault, every minute counted. Every hour cargo ships waited offshore was another hour for enemy reinforcements to arrive, for defensive positions to strengthen, for counterattacks to organize. Connolly suggested an enhancement. Instead of towing causeways behind LSTs, mount them on the ship's sides. This eliminated the 1.5-knot speed penalty from towing and shaved critical minutes off deployment time. Orders went out immediately. 2 specialized Seabee units formed: Construction Battalion Detachment 1005 and 1006. CBD 1005's mission was pontoon assembly, working 3 shifts around the clock. CBD 1006 perfected deployment procedures, training crew after crew until causeway installation became second nature. Both units shipped to North Africa in April 1943. Sicily invasion plans, Operation Hussey, were already underway. Allied commanders needed beach capacity for 2,590 vessels, 14,000 vehicles, 600 tanks, and 160,000 troops. The Germans knew this. Axis beach defences grew heavier every week. But now Allied planners had an advantage. The Germans couldn't anticipate. Floating steel bridges that appeared from nowhere. At dawn on July 10th, 10 LSTs carrying Seabee pontoon units approached Sicily's southern coast. 6 ships towed causeway sections. 4 carried them mounted on their sides, testing Connolly's modification. Enemy artillery opened fire at 0600, shells erupting in the surf as landing craft fought toward shore. Hussey's team worked through sustained fire. Pontoon sections weighing 100 tons each had to be maneuvered into position while German 88mm guns targeted anything moving in the water. Seabees rigged connections underwater, their hands numb in the cold Mediterranean, ears ringing from nearby explosions. The first causeway locked into place at 0620. Trucks began rolling ashore immediately. German commanders recognized the threat within hours. Intelligence reports reaching Berlin described impossible American logistics capability. One captured document noted Allied forces unloading vehicles at a rate 3 times faster than Wehrmacht planning models predicted, but understanding the problem didn't solve it. The pontoons were nearly indestructible. Multiple sealed compartments meant a direct artillery hit would damage one section without sinking the entire structure. Seabees carried spare pontoons and could swap damaged units in minutes. The whole system was designed for field repair under combat conditions. Base nightfall on D-Day, Seabee causeways had enabled the landing of 47,000 men and 3,200 vehicles. The beaches, German military engineers declared impossible for amphibious assault, were functioning as efficient cargo ports. Sicily proved the concept. But the Pacific War demanded scale beyond anything tested in the Mediterranean. Ulithi Atoll, Caroline Islands, September 1944. The U.S. Navy needed a forward base to support operations against the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. Ulithi offered a deep-water lagoon protected by coral reefs, but zero infrastructure. No docks, no piers, no facilities beyond a few grass huts and coconut palms. Seabees arrived with 45,000 pontoon boxes. They built Mogmog Seaplane Base in 31 days, a floating platform for seaplane maintenance, complete with machine shops and supply storage. They constructed pontoon causeways on 5 islands simultaneously. They assembled a 1,600-seat theatre from pontoons welded together and covered with canvas. The most ambitious project, a sectional floating dry dock capable of servicing battleships and aircraft carriers. Advanced Base Sectional Dock 1, ABSD-1, consisted of 10 sections. Each section measured 93 feet long, weighed 3,850 tons, and provided 10,000 tons of lifting capacity. Fully assembled, ABSD-1 stretched 1,000 feet, weighed 38,500 tons, and could lift vessels displacing 100,000 tons. The dock arrived in pieces, towed across 5,000 miles of Pacific Ocean. Assembly began on December 15, 1944. Seabees worked in 12-hour shifts, welding sections together, while typhoon warnings threatened to scatter the whole project across the lagoon. Each section had to be positioned with millimeter precision. Wing walls, folded horizontal during ocean towing, were raised to vertical position and bolted to pontoon decks. Watertight seals required perfection. A single leak in the wrong compartment could sink the entire structure. ABSD-1 became operational on January 8, 1945, 6 weeks after the first section arrived. On January 28, battleship USS Iowa entered the dock for propeller repair following typhoon damage. The ship weighed 45,000 tons. The dock lifted it completely clear of water in 4 hours. Without ABSD-1, Iowa would have sailed 6,000 miles back to Pearl Harbor, consuming 3 weeks of critical wartime. Instead, repairs completed in 5 days. Iowa returned to combat operations before the end of February. Between January 1945 and war's end in August, ABSD-1 serviced 47 major combatants: battleships, fleet carriers, heavy cruisers. Each repair saved weeks of transit time. Each ship returned to combat faster than Japanese intelligence believed possible. The pontoon system's flexibility extended beyond docks and causeways. Seabees adapted the magic boxes for dozens of applications their designers never imagined. They built rhino ferries, motorized pontoon barges powered by aircraft engines, capable of hauling 40-ton tanks through surf. At Normandy, rhinos carried men and equipment ashore when traditional landing craft couldn't handle the load. They constructed pontoon fuel storage tanks, each holding 50,000 gallons. These appeared overnight at captured airfields, enabling bomber operations within 24 hours of island seizure. They welded pontoons into floating cranes, powered by salvaged diesel engines, capable of lifting damaged aircraft from beaches and lagoons. One Seabee unit in the Philippines used pontoons as bridge supports, creating a 400-foot span across the Sarasota River in 72 hours. The bridge handled 40-ton Sherman tanks, crossing 5 at a time. At Iwo Jima, pontoon causeways went ashore on D-Day despite murderous Japanese fire. Seabee casualties exceeded 15% during the initial landings, but the causeways kept operating. Wounded men were carried off the beach. Ammunition and supplies flowed forward. The pontoons, riddled with shrapnel, remained afloat because redundant compartments maintained buoyancy even when 30% were holed. By war's end, Navy factories had produced 520,000 pontoon boxes, enough to build a causeway from San Francisco to Hawaii, or construct 52 floating dry docks capable of servicing every capital ship in the Pacific Fleet simultaneously. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The real achievement was conceptual. Laycock's innovation transformed logistics from a static problem into a deployable capability. Armies no longer needed to capture ports before establishing supply lines. The Seabees could create ports anywhere water was deeper than 8 feet. This changed strategic planning at the highest level. MacArthur's island-hopping campaign became feasible precisely because Seabees could establish advanced bases on atolls that lacked any traditional infrastructure. Nimitz's drive across the Central Pacific relied on pontoon causeways at Tarawa, Kwajalein, Saipan, Tinian, Peleliu, Guam. The Japanese recognized what was happening. Captured documents reveal their frustration. One report from Imperial Navy staff noted American logistics capabilities exceeded Japanese planning assumptions by orders of magnitude. Another, from Rabaul, described Allied construction speed as incomprehensible, possibly indicating far larger force numbers than intelligence estimates suggest. They never understood the secret. It wasn't numbers, it was engineering. Standardized components, rapid assembly, rugged enough to survive combat, simple enough for field repair. After the war, Laycock received the Legion of Merit for his pontoon development work. The citation noted his invention contributed materially to the success of amphibious operations throughout the Pacific and European theaters. The language was bureaucratic. The reality was more profound. Every island captured ahead of schedule. Every ship repaired at forward bases instead of sailing home. Every ton of supplies delivered directly onto contested beaches. Every hour saved, every mile not traveled, every delay avoided. That was Laycock's contribution, and the contribution of the Seabees, who turned his cigar box concept into battlefield reality. The pontoon system remained in service for decades. Korean War landings at Incheon used updated versions of the same 1943 designs. Vietnam-era Seabees deployed pontoon causeways throughout the Mekong Delta. The basic concept proved so sound that modern Navy engineering battalions still train on pontoon assembly, but the original achievement belongs to those first crews who proved the impossible was merely difficult. To Hussey's men at Sicily, swimming under fire to connect causeway sections while German artillery searched for them. To the Seabees at Ulithi, welding battleship dry docks together through tropical storms. To every construction battalion that turned hostile beaches into functional harbors in hours instead of weeks. They built what couldn't be built. They did it under fire. They made it look routine. Can do, the Seabee motto. Two words that summarized an entire philosophy of engineering. Someone says a floating dock can't be assembled in combat conditions. Show them it's already done. Someone claims an atoll can't support fleet operations. Hand them the construction schedule. Someone thinks beaches are too heavily defended for amphibious assault. Give them 8 minutes and a Seabee crew. The war proved something warfare theorists are still analyzing 80 years later. Infrastructure is weaponizable. Logistics determines strategy. And sometimes, the most powerful tool on a battlefield isn't a tank or aircraft or battleship. Sometimes it's a 1-ton steel box that floats.